Back in 2020, on October 30th, I was heading home about midnight. I saw a orange light off to the right, thinking it was a landing light from an airplane. I just kept an eye on it. When I turned off of the road I was on, I switched, I realized I was going to cross paths with this, and when I first saw it up close, coming towards me, it was at about maybe 1,000 feet, and it looked like an aircraft that was on fire. That was my first impression. As it got closer, I realized it was a triangle, but the entire craft was glowing orange, and as it got right over top of me at about 500 feet, I could see lines of energy radiating from the front tip to the back. And like I said, the whole thing looked like plasma, like inside of a glass triangle is the way I can describe it. And on the back, there was sticking out the back of it, it kind of looked like a candle flame, but it was in the wrong direction because it was pointing towards the side, and the flame was just like not flickering like a candle, but just moving a little bit. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Folks, real quick note, we are less than a week away from our very first live podcast in Austin, Texas, at the Paramount Theater, which happens February 5th. Tickets are almost completely sold out. If you want to come check us out, definitely do so. I promise you won't be disappointed when you arrive at the show. It's going to be such a great experience. So I urge you to check out those tickets. Go to itsprobablynothing.com for our tickets February 5th at the Paramount Theater in Austin, or February 20th in Canada. If you're a local Canadian like myself, make the drive. Come check us out February 20th at the Rialto Theater. Tickets at itsprobablynothing.com. We'll see you there. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Debriefed. My name is Chris Ramsey, and today we're going to be taking a look at something the Area 52 team likes to refer to as, is it a LARP or is it leak? And in today's game of LARP or leak, we're going to be looking at a whistleblower that came out, and I say the whistleblower with these giant air quotations, that came forward on 4chan and Reddit, ended up doing a Q&A, so not unlike the original 4chan whistleblower post that we covered in, I think, 4 parts earlier last year. This one does pull from those. I don't know if this is the same person. I don't know what to make of this, but at the end of the day, we're going to suspend our disbelief, pretend it's real for a second, and give it the benefit of the doubt as we read through it and see if we can find any connections. But yes, obviously, reserve some skepticism here. This isn't the gospel. This isn't the truth. This isn't fact. This isn't anything you should take seriously. But with that being said, folks, something you might want to take seriously is, well, a quick word from our sponsors. You know what nobody tells you about weeknight dinners? Is that they happen every single day. 5 p.m., it's back all the time, again. As someone who works a lot, I mean, it's just a lot to think about. Editing, researching, building episodes, and suddenly it's 9 p.m. and I realize I haven't eaten anything that isn't coffee. And that's the real problem. It's not about being good or bad at cooking. It's the mental load of figuring out, what I'm going to eat when I'm extremely exhausted, or how I'm going to cook. And that's why HelloFresh has been a game changer for me. I mean, look at this meal. They send you pre-portioned ingredients with step-by-step recipe cards, and it's done in about 30 minutes. No guessing, no grocery runs, no staring into the fridge like it owes you money. They've got over 100 recipes every week. And this one here, the garlic and herb dressed steak, this is my favorite so far. I mean, look at it. Admire this dish. What HelloFresh really gives you back isn't just dinner, it's time and energy. It's the ability to sit down instead of stress eating while standing at the counter. I use this, and if you're like me and you got a lot on your mind, you got a lot going on, I think you should too. So here's the deal. Go to HelloFresh.com/Area5210FM to get 10 free meals plus a free swilling knife, a $144.99 value on your third box. Offer valid while supplies last. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. Again, that's HelloFresh.com/Area5210FM. If your nights look anything like mine, this just makes life a whole lot easier. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm salivating and I really want to eat this delicious plate. Maybe they might be thinking, oh, he's not actually going to eat this food. So good. All right, folks, we paid the bills. Sort of. Also, check out area52.shop. If you like this tie and tie clip combo, as well as the cardigans that I wear here, not this one, but usually the cardigans that I wear, you can check those out at area52.shop. It supports us directly. All of the merch there is designed by us. We work very hard in producing everything we put out on our shop. You can also check out our Patreon or a membership if you want to become a member and an intern there with tons of perks, which also supports us directly. And if not, you can do the internet things and keep it right here. Like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And folks, without any further ado, let's get through this. We got a lot of pages to get through. I don't know if we'll do it all today, but we're going to see how far we can get into it. All right, so the first page begins with a bit of an opening message for everyone here. And it says, hello, in open parentheses, and goodbye, all. I'm speaking out because I, and now others also, know what is coming. You will be receiving more quote-unquote secret information on UAP over the next 2 years as a gradual measure before the grand reveal. I want you all to be prepared for the eventualities here. I have 3 degrees and very high competence in algorithm design. I was directly involved in the autokinetic implementation of a European country's zero-point crafts. I have membership with multiple hard-to-reach agencies across Europe. Even then, I still know very little about the full zero-point capability of every single country I've worked for. Recently, I was part of what is known as an NHE-7 debrief, directly receiving communication from a being originating outside of this planet. This NHE has been in support of the human race for a very long time and will be leaving Earth soon to make way for what is coming. All right, some foreshadowing here, but ominous, like this alien's living here, but he's like, all right, I guess it's time for me to pack up and get out of here because something else is coming. The Earth has historically been a quote-unquote battleground for alien species. Over tens of thousands of years, exotic species have demonstrated magical, actually just quantum, ability to people of this planet to attain local godlike status. Think Mahabharata in Hinduism. Some of this was for personal gain, whereas some were genuine sacrifice to teach people of this planet how to correctly increase quantum states to positive, what we call integer flows. The repeated destructive flow was eventually stopped after a benevolent species laid claim to this planet and left behind an autonomous facility to regularly audit the planet for any outside interference. This planet has been under the protection of this ever-watching autonomous facility for a very long time. This is now ending due to depletion of local resources, not just on this planet. It has been unable to print craft occupants for a while and has been gradually reducing the size of autonomous bots in an effort to maintain audit operations. I will only answer sensible questions. Okay. Many of flags are being raised so far, folks. Let me know in the comments after that opening message. What is your gestalt? What is your feeling or vibe that this person gives off? Do we feel like this is a LARP to begin with, or do we feel like this might be real? Are you on the fence? What's your conviction level? I'm rather low. This does sound like somebody who, again, if this subject matter And by that, I refer to as the system that sort of occupies this planet. If that is real and indeed a reality, then it's going to be hard to distinguish fact from fiction here, right? If it is indeed a reality, this might be a LARP of that reality. So one of the previous leaks might have been real, and this might just be sort of world building off of that. The other option being that the first one is completely fake, and this one is also just made up. And another option, yet again, is that the first one would be made up, but this one's real. But, who really knows? I don't gel well with the idea that we're running out of resources to print these autonomous beings and craft. I think there are probably plenty of resources left, especially in the oceans, that are completely untapped. It would surprise me to know that we're out, that a few hundred or few thousand years of making UFOs, we would run out, when after 100 years we have billions of cars and we still haven't run out. So it doesn't really make any sense maybe I'm wrong there, but that seems a little ridiculous to me. But alas, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this stuff is really hard to obtain and to create, and maybe the original poster, the OP, as he'll be referred to here as, might clarify some of that. A nuclear bomb detonates very soon in the future. This is a question, by the way. A nuclear bomb detonates very soon in the future and we're all going to die. Because robots had a religion that everyone is born in the infinite as punishment for not being chosen to be robots. Even though the truth is God loves everyone equally and all have their purpose. But my question is, do you think that the time-traveling UFOs will continue to kidnap people and continue to place people in segregated realities? Or do you think that some people will be allowed to interact with each other even despite Earth being destroyed and everyone placed inside of a matrix? 4chan is a funny place, folks. There is no grain of salt large enough for you to be holding while reading these comments, but so just know that the questions will be completely unhinged from this point moving forward, as 4chan might just be the biggest cesspool of information and especially of posting. There's no regulation there, so this might be the tip of the iceberg. But interesting question nonetheless. And the OP answers, I was warned I would get some shizo comments. I assume that means schizophrenic, but even reading this one weirded me out a bit. The threat is not about a nuclear weapon detonating directly. It's the weapon being allowed to detonate due to the lack of resources from our autonomous facility to stop it from happening. The Earth is about to be opened up to the outside interference again in the most overt way possible. I don't know anything about time traveling or kidnappings or about robot God. Thanks for the warning, OP, and good morning. Do you believe in God? How do you understand religion on Earth given what you have come to know? And the answer, I never used to. I was brought up an intellectual. I was very indifferent to religion later in my life, but recently I felt a strong change within myself, specifically towards the message of Christ. Personally, only the message of Christ encapsulates everything I think the average person should be working towards, and it has a very strong correlation with the NHE briefing I received. Whether this happened before or after I learned what I know, I'm unsure. I would love to read this briefing, by the way. I've worked with associates of the Vatican who seem to be under no illusion the autonomous facility was left behind by Christ. According to them, after the facility is quote-unquote broken and the planet is in crisis, Christ will appear again and restore protections to this planet. Jesus was apparently a high-status traveling being of another NHE species who placed multiple protections on this planet. Through the autonomous facility, all reference to other civilizations who worship non-benevolent NHE were erased. Okay. Interesting. So this alien Jesus came by and buffed our planet for a while, but that buff is unfortunately wearing thin. So they expect him to be back, and that might be the second coming. Okay. So in regards to we'll be leaving Earth soon to make way for what is coming, What is coming? When is it coming? And how do we prepare for it? With the cessation of the autonomous facility, the planet will be open to outside interference again. I've been told it is as grand as receiving other civilizations across space. The problem we have are some of the species not having good intentions towards this planet. We are rich in life-giving resources. Most species run out of materials and have to plunder other planets, which we will have almost no defense to clearly just might be late at night here. We will have almost no defense, this is giving me a stroke, should they induce world-changing events, like altering the electromagnetic field of our planet and opening us up to a cataclysm most of us wouldn't survive in, though the inbound species would, okay? Convenient. The common man cannot defend themselves against this, but with advancements in UAP technology, a select few will survive by habiting other planets in the solar system. Okay, we did have a post on Reddit that we read through a while ago where he was talking about 2027, the arids sort of protecting the evolution, the monitoring of the Earth. Meanwhile, this ant species was going to invade us, and that we were going to end up being weaponized by not the arids but the council in order to defend ourselves from this possible alien threat. All of which sounds like a sci-fi novel. My one qualm sits with the fact that if you were some type of species that needed resources, let's assume, which I don't, by the way. I don't assume that 1 billion years advancement in technology makes it so that we still plunder planets for their resources. I think at that point we might have found some type of workaround. But in the event that we still need resources in order to develop technology and to sustain our habitat, you would think that you would plunder some of these exoplanets that don't have a defense or that don't have living beings. Unless, of course, we are the resource. That's all I can take from this. Because otherwise, it would be much less of a struggle to, go to some of these exoplanets that potentially have the exact same amount of material, if not more, than Earth, plunder those without any resistance, as futile and meek as that resistance might be, it still requires an extra effort to get through. So why not just go to one of these planets that doesn't have things on them? Living things. Seems a bit strange to me as well. Again, just another little flag popping up here. And I'm still, considering the idea that we might be the resource. The containers, as was put by the briefing that was allegedly given to Bob Lazar. We might be the containers of some valuable resource, maybe our souls or whatnot. But then we start sounding a little like Scientologists. And again, is that real? I don't know. It's all kind of weird. A real leaker would post on Reddit, not 4chan. Fake. Okay. I don't want to post on a website with such a strong set of identifying data on users. Anything from browser ID, HWID, IP could be fuzzy matched with one of my machines, and I don't want that to happen. This guy's being a little defensive, odd thing to reply to. Why do you type like this? A full break with each new line. Are you sure you aren't a ChatGPT because you read like you a ChatGPT? I'm not any Transformers model, though I did help built one of the biggest iterations of a Europe-owned byte-latent model to try and decode some symbols given to me from an exotic craft. I'm not the best software developer, and the best people in the field are just flat out not working on this cutting-edge technology. So the OP is definitely European. It seems that way anyways, with the spelling errors and sort of just his vocabulary. LARP would have worked better if you had just said you're an atheist, buddy boy. I feel I'm closer to being an atheist than a real Christian. I've seen a cross on exotic material. NHE7 explained to us The cross is just symbolic of doing more than what you would normally do to raise the quantum frequency of this planet. It feels as if everything I've worked towards in pursuit of intelligence has just melted away in the past few years. The technologies behind zero-point crafts are not difficult at all. The average university physics chemistry lecturer across most top-tier universities in Europe could recreate the technology with the appropriate knowledge. I was directly involved with the construction of a zero-point craft using copper. Not material, non-native to this planet. Okay. Interesting that you bring up copper also being used during the Philadelphia experiment. If you look into the Montauk project or any of the sort of archival Al Bielek interviews where they were using these giant Tesla coils to sort of disappear this submarine and eventually have it time travel or what have you. Copper seemed to be an important part there. Original 4chan whistleblower also said copper was very important. Question, wake up. The world is so stupid it doesn't deserve to change anything. I was where you stood to see if it would change the world, and then I realized it was a comedy loop disguised as tragedy. And the funny thing is that you and I used to believe it was real. I don't know if you're still there, but I'll tell you in advance that there are many people who also choose to stay silent and go out to observe. They don't have time to play these games anymore. If you're tired and bored, just go out and sit. There are still many empty seats. Answer. I believe in the human race. The incentive structure is all wrong and society is in a constant state of spiraling because of the lack of moral policing between common people. It's not a top-down problem, it's a bottom-up. It will take time, but I believe we will get there, if we are allowed to have enough time for that to occur. There will be a great cataclysm in the near-term future. The method of deployment does not matter. Certain European countries have been working with America to figure out how to prevent it from occurring at all. This is interesting because this comes off the heels, actually this is prior to an announcement made by a bank. I read a headline that some bank had a memo, how do we prepare in the potential eventual case of alien contact? How do we protect our assets or whatever? So that was leaked, I think, recently, which was interesting. And if you're a company out there or a financial institution, I think you should take those type of precautions, well, at least address them in the event of zombie apocalypse, in the event of a giant EMP, in the event of nuclear disaster, in the event of alien invasion. I think all of these things should be discussed at least to an extent where you have some type of plan put forward. The government already has those plans. Why wouldn't the institutions that have trillions of dollars also, prepare for that? I think that's just a normal thing to do. What did NHE7 look like? Did they say anything truly unique? Okay, here we go. Prismata. Prismata. With a Y. So prismata, but often spelt with an I, is a term with a few different meanings depending on the context. Optics and geometry, it's the plural of a prism. Okay. Architectural and material science refers to prism-like structural forms or faceted crystalline shapes, especially when describing light-handling surfaces and repeating geometric units. Okay. Esoteric and fringe usage, you'll see prismata used as a made-up or symbolic term to imply layers of perception, facets of reality, or ways information is refracted through consciousness. That's interesting. That is really interesting. I like that. I like that word. I never directly saw NHE7. We were full-faced blindfolded before we got into the room. Oh, wow. So it was a physical being. I could hear machinery and a gentle clang periodically. There was definitely a breathing pattern, approximately 1 breath per 7-8 seconds. It sounded hoarse and tired. Prior to the session, I was told by one very elusive military senior, Italian, the purpose of the session was to receive instructions on what to do going forwards and to be as open-minded as possible. There were 7 others with me. All of us had a silent understanding not to speak to each other or to do anything erratic. I did not recognize anybody, and I did not ask what branch they belonged to. I remember hearing/experiencing a very distinct knocking noise as we were led into the room with NHE 7. It wasn't in my ears, it was directly in my brain. The senior leading us kept telling us to be open-minded and not to be afraid. At one point, I was physically seeing the space around me while the blindfold was still on, in what seemed like ultraviolet-leaning colors. I knew exactly where to walk. We took seats opposite NHE 7, the alien, who told us he's been waiting for this day for a very long time. His voice was almost my own, playing in what felt like my own brain. I was constantly shivering through this process. I felt a strange goosebump release before he would communicate. I saw the Earth spinning, fire on the planet, great tsunami waves, and a light becoming incredibly bright in the sky. It made me physically put my hands up to block whatever was playing in my mind. I'm in. I'm so in right now. His purpose was to ensure this planet would survive long enough for what was written. There was to be no interference in the growth of humans, for we were going to be measured on the lapse of protection period. A series of patterns played out in my mind, most of which I cannot link to anything yet, but have a very clear mental visual of. He said we were going to propagate those ideas through the public. So this is very interesting because, a lot of abduction cases, as noted by John Mack and so many others, feature the experiencer describing some type of cataclysmic event. I always found it interesting that those type of visions would be given to experiencers who honestly couldn't do much about it. Why even show them that? So for me, it's always been some type of psyop. It has to be some type of psyop to control the listener. But in this case, it's interesting because, this being isn't abducting anyone. It's essentially the abducted being and still purveying these messages. It's just very interesting. A select few will survive by inhabiting other planets in our solar system. So in response to this, the question is, I don't know if you're new here or not, but there is a debate about the possible event of ships appearing and offer salvation and whether if getting on them is a trap or not. By the way you speak, you seem to be on the side of getting on them. But what are your thoughts if such a thing would happen? Should we get on the ships if they appear and make an offer? I think we had this conversation with the Udo Wartana video, but let me know what you guys think. If there was some cataclysmic event and these ships all appeared and said, you got to get on or else you're all dead, are you going down with the ship or are you getting on their ship? That's the question. I would love to hear your answers on that. Wow. I think, man, depending on my age, I'd probably get on the ship. I'd probably get all, hard to say. We're so familiar with being manipulated that it makes it really a roll of the dice. Be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Answer. Let's hear the OP's thoughts. I haven't heard of this, though I have been living on a military site for a while. I'm not sure, but I will be actively thinking about this. I do not think we are supposed to leave this planet. We are the children of this planet and should be protecting it, as it has given us everything we needed to exist. To me, it feels like it would be abandoning your mother during a warlike attack. I would rather go down with the ship. But in the face of whatever is about to come, it might be the case that even I would change my mind. That's a sensible answer. Question, doesn't matter. Whitley Strieber talks of trauma on children being an evil worth going through for the psionic gifts. The more I dig into the Esalen Institute types, the less difference I perceive between them and Aquino tier monarchs practicing cults. In fact, They are one and the same. The Galactic Federation Luciferianism adrenalizes children just like the lizard freaks do. I look to Jesus and reject you. But tell us how you really feel. I would love to invite this guy for Thanksgiving dinner. What a lively conversation that would be. I was brought onto the program via the GATE system in England. Okay, interesting. He's a GATE child. I know many of you listening were in that program as well. Your post reads schizo, but I am well aware of the psionic nature of these crafts. All quantum entities, what people describe as consciousness, is just the quantum wave having the ability to self-express. Yeah, okay. According to the NHE 7, we exist to maximize the calculation of this quantum wave to prevent overlap from the existing quantum waves. A positive quantum integer on this planet is the net benefit of the cosmic field, leading to a future where we will be allowed to live. If we do not have a positive quantum integer, the population will be culled to prevent our quantum waves from negatively impacting the state of the entire quantum wave. Think of the quantum wave as a timeline, though not entirely accurate. This is really fascinating. The molecular biologist that essentially, allegedly, dissected the aliens also said that he was briefed very sparsely on their culture. And one thing that he had mentioned was this apotheosis, this separation from God, that essentially these beings are using us to mine experience to then feed consciousness, the quantum field, until we reach an apotheosis, a critical mass. After attaining, as much experience as we can, we're life maxing. And what would that look like once we get to the end of that? It's interesting to think that the end game of that is simply to increase what the OP put here as the positive integer in order to, outlast or outstrengthen the competing quantum timelines, as he kind of puts it here. And that in order for us to survive, we legitimately have to raise our quantum awareness or whatever. I mean, all very complicated. And I mean, this could all be Narnia for all I know. Question, are there other species here at this time? And for how long would we have to be on our own? Who is coming? Answer, there are many. I've read reports saying they have already set up shop to capitalize as soon as protections have expired. Ugh. Don't like that answer. All right, in response to you will be receiving more secret information on UAP over the next 2 years, a gradual measure before the grand reveal. Would you happen to know more about this reveal? Will the government reveal to the people some good footage, or will ET personally reveal themselves to the people? Answer, I want to answer this, but do not want to extrapolate. I don't think there are government plans for anything right now. I don't think they're in the loop at all. Whoa, that the government isn't in the loop? So this gentleman here works for something obviously outside of the government, which would make sense. I think government oversight would probably result in a leak happening at the deepest core. He's probably dealing with like some unnamed faction of majestic, people. I don't know. Okay, interesting. Please tell us more about this entity. What else did he say? Did he ever say what species he is? What country were you in when you spoke to him? What kind of company were you working for? And if it was a government, which one? Now, he did mention that one of the gentlemen talking to him was Italian, and there is that sort of MJ-12 equivalent Italian sort of government that I believe, who was a part of that? It was the GS-33, I think it was called, or something of the sort. But they essentially recovered the Magenta crash in 1933. But so maybe that. Answer, I have detailed most above. The most important points have already been mentioned. The only thing I want to put out there right now is the implication of us effectively being naked for the first time in a very long time. I cannot begin to explain the terrifying nature of what I felt when I was shown the autonomous facility ceasing. It wasn't the disappearance that frightened me most. It was knowing this incredibly powerful entity will no longer be watching us and protecting us from God knows what. I can say I spent a lot of time stationed in Italy and Germany. I cannot give any details on the rest. Okay. As I speculated. Now, the other country that comes to mind is Sweden. And I'll be covering a read-through on some documents that were discovered in a false bottom of a drawer in Sweden that talked about a facility that had these craft, as well as some other really interesting news. Sweden's got a lot of, I think, buried UFO stuff that probably goes unnoticed. And so Sweden would be my guess here, especially with the way he's talking. Question, what do you make of the whole Tajatan disclosure story with Irma? No idea, folks. I don't know what rubbish you've been reading, but it isn't applicable to anything that's actually being stated in this thread. All right, moving on. Can we please get anything to corroborate your information? No BS. I was thinking about posting my actual ID cards. Some have very unique military symbols on them, but I haven't made peace with that decision yet. Some people have reached out to me to publicize things appropriately with certain legal protections, but there's no such thing when you work in this field. Well, I, for one, offer you an open invitation. I will fly you out to my studios. I will, we can have an interview, and I'll keep all your information anonymous if you'd like. Reach out to me. Find a way to get in touch through Reddit, through my Discord, through someplace, and let's have a conversation. If you're willing to put your ID out there, I'm willing to give you a platform. In response to, I don't think there are any government plans right now, question, what do you suspect might happen in 2027? All right, something we all want to know. Answer, I don't know about any concrete timeline, but the lapse of our autonomous facility is definitely happening soon. The evidence is basically pointing to imminent closure. There it is, there's that word. With some of the crafts being released quite literally unfinished due to lack of resources. There's a jellyfish UFO, which is quite literally an unfinished sphere type, lacking the capacity to completely cloak itself as other crafts do. Gravitational distortion out of human color spectrum light emissions. There are spheres being released that barely have the ability to propel themselves. Never mind any ability to cloak/gather information. It wouldn't surprise me if all of this is projected to happen in 2027. Question, tell me all the evidence you have of the facility closing. How familiar are you with other leaks? There have been some big leaks about this facility existing in the Bermuda Triangle. Tell me the most convincing thing you have physically seen yourself. How do you know you aren't receiving a PSYOP? Great question from a well-informed person here. The answer, the evidence can be seen in now declassified images of some of the crafts themselves. You'll see how more of them fail over time and come back to this point to validate new information. The facility had to use a lot of backup resources during the New Jersey drone encounters to protect this planet from an imminent threat. The orbs that were seen above America that day were scanning for the hostile NHEs and their crafts. I'm not familiar with many other leaks, but before making this post, I did give it a quick search. The one I know to be very real is the Bigelow 2009-2010 leak. Most communication to America via European counterparts occurred through that company. Probably referring to NIDS. There was a leak about a Tic Tac and some quantum ZPE stuff. I have physically handled exotic material and built algorithms to have the crafts move in autonomous ways, intercepting a missile or avoiding collisions on a somewhat randomly instantiated route. The crafts we build are hybrid digital/quantum in their mechanistic functions, whereas the ones truly exotic are 100% quantum. I do not entirely understand how communication occurs to these crafts using ordinary waves. I've always known gravity to bend space-time, but the quantum element here enables us to imprint an intent on the craft itself to accept certain rules, which almost bypasses laws of the universe as we currently understand them. Whoa. Imprinting impressions into the craft is wild, but I mean, there is obviously some type of non-physical integration interface with these crafts that probably has something to do with the morphic field or, our brain's ability to pick up on the quantum field and interface with it, but so wild to think about. All right, we got a big question here, and we're going to have a big answer here, okay? So this is in, I think, 5 parts or 6 parts, this question. I'll humor you for a bit, OP. Seems like you are not American, if one were to judge how you write. 1. What's the point of all this? I mean this quite literally. What is the literal point of having Earth being a battleground? If they wanted godlike status, why did they not stop/intervene in the violence and pain people felt across this planet? Centuries-old facility only exists to audit if other aliens are coming to Earth? 2. Cosmic entities coming to Earth. To me, seems like all of NATO versus the entire zebra population. What could the average person do to protect themselves? As it would be implied, they have technological strength that far exceeds anything we could possibly engineer. 3. From a mathematical point of view, if what you say is true, then aliens have been here since the very creation of humanity. Under this train of thought, Earth is probably in the territory of another larger, more advanced species that has colonized the Milky Way galaxy. So, why would all the alien races come here when they can just go to the source for whatever they want? 4. With the amount of Earth-like planets in the universe, why come here? If they are so technologically advanced, couldn't they just invent what they lack? 5. Approximately 1 breath per 7-8 seconds. You counted this? 6. What purpose exactly does a positive or negative quantum wave mean? How is this a concern? These are great questions. And much like the question I had was like, why can't you just invent whatever it is you're lacking? If you're so advanced, just figure it out, right? Answer: I am not American, born in England, but spent all of my years across Europe. I have been to America for a number of reasons associated with my work. There is no purpose to the Earth having been a battleground for other species. According to a report I read in a classified setting, no alterations beyond first iteration, on a species benevolent to this planet. In order to maintain their quantum fields as positive as possible, they have to banish people from their societies who sometimes set up shop on other planets for their own purposes. Earth was just in a state of growth, enabling some NHEs to effectively do whatever they wanted to an emergent population with no knowledge of quantum fields. Some of these cases have resounding implications to this day. It's quite literally a case of an exotic species just here for their own leisure until another species, benevolent, discovered what was happening here. Not sure I totally get what the answer to that question is, but it seems to me as though they're also simply sort of monitoring whatever's going on here. It's not just technological strength. Some of these beings can quite literally imprint thoughts into you, expand the capacity of your brain to see with a blindfold on, etc., and much more. It's quite literally the ability to manipulate what we know as space-time using nothing but their own thoughts. Yeah, that would make you like God, wouldn't it? I've said this and I'll say it again. If you can make someone hear a voice in their head, maybe their own voice, as loud as you're hearing me now, or the voice of God, or whatever it may be, and that voice starts telling you all sorts of strange things, many people will believe it's the truth. After obviously getting a psych evaluation, you'll start to question reality because of it, because it is now a new truth. You are now being presented something that you didn't consider to be possible. And the result is, if that is possible, what else is possible? And so you're going to start to listen to a lot of these voices. And if you had the ability to do that, you could potentially, manipulate an entire species. To what end, though, right? NHEs differ vastly in their requirements for continuity. Everything is still a resource game. There's no such thing as a perfect exchange, but we can get fairly close to it. The ability to collapse space-time in front of a craft to accelerate to hyperspeed actually takes very little resources. But extrapolate this to human purposes to understand this approach. Would somebody want to travel in the first place? The real value is in the extraction of life, specifically the ability to gain further understanding on why this grand algorithm we call life has propagated in its way throughout the cosmic quantum field. It's not just in humans, but in plants and atomic structures too. All of quantum fields have a signature. The expression of our planetary quantum field is the culmination of every single imprint of life on this planet. It includes everything from flowers, insects, to macro entities as us humans, with the caveat of our thoughts also participating in the projected equation, etc. We are not the skin we see on other humans, but instead we are the culmination of the macro process where the micro entities, cells and atomic structures, interact with cosmic field instantiated design patterns with a variability factor of the brain expressing itself as the primary organ of the quantum field. This way, humans fit the design pattern of the universe while still being able to contribute to the state of the quantum wave. Whoa, that's an amazing thought right there. Much like what we covered with that molecular biologist, the idea that, your macro physical reality is a result of thought. We are all just a mental projection of the quantum field itself. We are consciousness expressing itself in what is perceived to us as a physical reality. In that physical reality, it is layered because then we have these thoughts that are seemingly our own, which then affects the physical reality, which then in turn probably, affects the quantum field once again. So there is this positive feedback loop constantly being created in reality and getting more and more complex. But again, to what end? And I think that might be the question that all of these aliens have. The question is very, very deep indeed. It's what is it? Why is it? I think we touched on this at the top of the episode, but we might be the resource, or at least part of the process in mining the resource. Maybe the resource is information, and we are mining it, and they can control how we mine it in a more efficient way. I don't know. Think of it as an infinite number of builders/road workers, building a continuous road in front of them. Instead of using any form of aggregate, the fuel for this is the variability and macro signature of every single builder on the road. More expression is directly proportional to the size and length of the road. In parallel to our road, there are other roads trying to occupy as much space as possible. Two roads cannot collide without one inheriting the state of the other road. Okay, so may the more complex state of reality win, I guess? The greater the positive state of the quantum wave, the stronger the overlapping process is. The quantum wave process is not happening in three-dimensional space and is pioneered by a select number of high-integer NHEs, who ultimately decide which field expressions should exist for the greater continuity of the quantum wave. You can think of this as almost a competition between quantum waves. The wave which has the strongest positive state wins over the other waves. Our future continues, while the losing quantum wave is ingested and energies recycled for deployment for new variability calculations, for the inevitable overlapping with future quantum waves, etc. Have you guys ever seen Loki, the show, the series on Disney? It's an amazing series because it deals with like alternate timelines, past and present, future events, but also at one point it deals with seemingly at one point these these giant like overseers sitting on these thrones, and they're the ones who are controlling the main timeline, and which ends up being an illusion and whatnot. But that's essentially what he's saying here, is that there are these overlookers. You know, it makes you wonder what's looking over them, you know? As soon as there's someone controlling something, it adds this infinite variable where there has to be somebody controlling it. Where's the end? Is this the end of that? Are the beings just always, they've been around forever? Kind of breaking my brain here. Question. This sounds incredible. Is this the hidden truth that the public should not know? If the truth is this abstract, why not just tell the public and have people start being good to each other? Answer. I think the hidden truth is more about our capabilities with 0-point energy. Nobody should be paying for bills right now. We can close shop on the entire energy industry complex. Not more drilling for oil, no more paying for electricity or water, etc. Also, I know certain American companies previously forced scientists to sign death waivers in exchange for, effectively, infinite support for their families. Question, dude, what was the threat? Answer, I don't know the specifics. I just know it was an event which forced the facility to expend most of its remaining resources. It would not surprise me if it was a purposely calculated event to force cessation itself. Question, so was consciousness/life imitated on this planet when the bad NHEs arrived? Or in other words, did their consciousness trigger ours by their mere presence on Earth? Also, did their malevolent consciousness add to why humans are partially malevolent and evil? Or is that just the basic nature of consciousness? It's a deep question. Answer, this is a good question. Personally, I have no idea, but I am aware of the Vatican holding an archive on the history of all religious experience on this planet. If things were sprung into motion then, I would imagine it would be in that collection of documents. Obviously, you know, having access and knowing where to look in the Vatican archive would be a huge help in all of this. Part of the difficulty in that is that even people who have access to the Vatican, you need to request access to certain things. So you just have to even know what you're looking for. It's vast, man. It is a vast archive. Question. The only thing I want to know more about is the meeting with the Ailmeo. All right, that's probably alien. OP, what happened? Where did you meet it? Answer. We went through a corridor into a very large elevator. It was almost spotless. Even the button sounded a satisfying click when I saw the senior press the button. We went down for what felt like 5 minutes. I remember after 20 or 30 seconds had passed, there was a nervous laugh in the elevator. We must have been incredibly deep. We felt the air get hotter very quickly. We entered a large open space. There was a large metallic table with large, almost bear-sized scratch marks on one side and papers on the other. It was through another room. Here we were blindfolded. All right. Interesting little detail about the bear scratches. Okay. Question, UAP is total sleight of hand. It's not where the true power lies. Answer, the implication here is UAPs being product of development on this planet. I can understand. During my main project, onboarding in Germany, I saw a classic UFO saucer with the swastika on it. I think this technology has been solved for a while. We might be the remainder civilization trying to play catch-up. My last post for a bit. I need a break. I have things to sort out. All right, we've got a little bit of an update as he comes back, after which there will be a second part to this read-through, which I think we'll save for another time. So far, very interested. I am loving this. I think it's awesome. I'm a big fan of science fiction, and if you take it as fiction, it's a lot of fun. If you take it as truth, you know, you're going to hide in a small ball in a fetal position under your blanket. But yeah, I think the former is suggested. A little while later. Hello, all. Thank you for your patience. I am back, though something very strange has happened. One of my information distribution contacts reached out to me and brought my attention to the recent BAASS leak. Okay, the BASS leak, that's what I meant, the NIDS thing with Bigelow. It's of some high importance to me because I know the original leak to be absolutely true based on communications we've had in the past. The part which sticks out is the screenshot of the new leak is of a document mentioning the voice highlighted and the phrase cessation of RF energy. There's no reason for the voice to be highlighted here in a document released immediately after my disclosure. It's been stated it might be a direct message to me, given the details disclosed yesterday. The post further states Elizondo visits Corbell's home to train him. Corbell is one of the people within my reach for disclosure of all information. This is putting a stop to almost all of that decision-making process and will likely put a stop to the same process for others around me. I am, and you all should also be, well aware of America's involvement in the removal of assets from foreign countries. I am also aware of the closure of laboratories to prevent exotic material from being studied. Whether the mentioned individual, Stratton, is responsible, I am unsure. Okay, interesting. We have names here. Corbell, Stratton, Elizondo. I don't know where that puts, does that give you higher conviction or lower conviction when names like this are involved? I think it's interesting. Question, isn't transcendental meditation all about trying to connect to this fundamental layer? How does one connect to the broader field? Answer, meditation of any kind works by driving your biofield towards its lowest toroidal eigenmode, suppressing smaller oscillations so that whatever sits close to non-zero VEV. Repeating the mantra forces your local phase into a stable pattern, collapsing your personal FTM into ground state coherence. At that point, any tiny fluctuation in the field will drive proportional phase shift. TLDR, quiet your then any matching wave in the universal field can reach you. TLDR, meditation is magical. Take it from me. By the way, I do feel like the answers are, for the most part, inconsequential. As a researcher, as a magician, I can tell you firsthand that knowing the answer is not going to provide any type of resolve. It will, if anything, disappoint you to know the method to how things work, and get those answers, will essentially destroy some of that wonder. In that case, in the case of UFOs, you get the answer. It might not be the answer you're looking for. The journey, obviously, itself is the answer, right? It's there that we enter flow states. It's there that we enter these passion-fueled obsessions. It's there that we create original and unique thoughts and art. That is the answer. It's the process itself that is everything. For some reason, and probably to enable the process, we are internally seeking that answer. But again, we're probably only seeking that answer, trying to attain that goal in order to fuel the process, and not the other way around. We don't have this obsessive process to get to the end so that we have the answer. The answer exists as a carrot on a stick so that we continue to fuel these thoughts and these, experiences. Meditation, to me, seems to be the non-physical microscope that we need in order to observe the fundamental particles of reality. You're not going to get it by staring down a microscope, but you will start to understand it perhaps through deep introspection and transcendental or out of body or, astral projection or that type of experimentation. It always comes down to it. When we get into the weeds of UFO lore, it always, always, every single time without failure boils down to consciousness. And our only access to it isn't through scientific paper. It isn't through traveling at the speed of light. It is through introspective calming of the mind. Perhaps there's a shortcut, a more chaotic and uncontrollable shortcut through substance use, but there is a controlled way of doing it. It takes practice, and we're given all these physical items and stimulations in order to distract us from that truth. The truth is that, yeah, if you do practice these things, you will end up facing some type of magical reality that you had not expected, and that is right there, and that you're a part of. And I felt it, and that's the only way that's the only reason I'm being preachy about it, is because, like, you don't know until you do it, man. If you haven't done it, don't knock it. Say whatever you want. Say fake, say psyop, say all these things. But if you haven't given 3 or 4 months of your life to trying to just get to that point where you could leave your body or whatever, then, like, I don't think you're well informed. But people who have felt that, who felt those things, and, might take longer, might not take as long for other people to achieve that state of altered consciousness. But, like, it changes everything, man. Fundamentally, it really does. So I'm really happy to hear that at least this person is like, oh yeah, it's a big deal. Like, a big deal. In fact, it is the deal. It's how we access it. And who knows, maybe these NHE live in that field that we can only get to through, months of and years of devotion. They just kind of have access to it all the time. And it's the reason why we would see some of these beings during these DMT trips, during dreamlike states, during astral projection, during abductions. The non-physical, in all likelihood, is reality. And we're just experiencing some weird reflection, or, I don't know, some projection of it. I digress very deeply, but this is cathartic, and it's fun to talk about this stuff. I really love it. Question: when does this underlying consciousness attach to the DNA signal? Interested in that implication. Thanks. Good question. Answer: when zygote DNA coils form a torus and cells oscillate in unison, the biofield locks onto the global via those toroidal modes. Once all higher oscillations vanish, only the basic torus remains. Consciousness tunes in. So at the formation of the DNA helix, I assume? Whoa. Only seems superficially both 1D-like loops, but ultimately different. NPCs postulate tiny vibrating strings, or higher dimensional brains, as the basic entities. Then build spacetime and particles on top of that. In reality, there is only one active scalar field with a tachyonic drive to self-condense in stable objects that emerge are toroidal solitons that generate both particles and spacetime geometry through their phase structure and naturally account for gauge interactions, gravity, etc. I'm not going to pretend I understood any of that, folks. I'm not... Let me just pull this up here. We take a picture. I'm going to send that through to my little friend here, ChatGPT, and we'll say what he says here. All right. Can you break down that paragraph that I sent you as if I was a 6th grader?
Absolutely. Let's turn that big brainy paragraph into something a 6th grader could totally get. So basically, the paragraph is talking about how when a cell's DNA kind of twists up into a donut shape. Yep, imagine a DNA donut. It's like the cell is tuning into a bigger universal radio station. And when everything lines up just right, that cell can basically get a signal from this big universal field of consciousness. In other words, it's kind of like the DNA is a little antenna. And once it's in that donut shape, it can pick up a universal Wi-Fi signal. That's the gist.
What does gravity have to do with it there? He mentions like geometry and gravity and phase structure and what does all that mean?
All right. Let's break that down too and keep it 6th grade friendly. So the writer is basically saying that when you get these cool little DNA donut shapes, or whatever shape they're talking about, you're actually dealing with some sort of pattern or geometry that's linked to how the universe works. And when they talk about gravity or phase structure, they're just adding a bit of extra sciencey flavor to say, hey, these shapes or patterns might explain how things like gravity or the fabric of space kind of fit together. In other words, they're saying these funky DNA shapes might not just pick up a consciousness signal, they might also have something to do with how the universe's invisible rules, like gravity and geometry, are all tied up together. It's a bit like saying the shape of something can explain why things fall down, or how space is put together.
That's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy. I like that. Wow. Last question here. Why blindfold you? You should have been allowed to make judgment with your own eyes in the truth of this being. What did its energy feel like? Example, heavy, oppressive, peaceful, joyous? Did you instinctually recoil internally before it spoke? Answer. Humans are accustomed to judging by visual stimuli and really opening their mind to what could truly have constructive value for yourself. We should get used to approaching things blindly much more often in order to open ourselves to new things. The self-induced, to understand what self is, to understand what all others are, to understand that empathy is the key to everything. And, whoa, this guy's dropping all sorts of philosophical bombs on us, and I'm here for it. I think, if not written by a GPT, it is eloquently put. I will say I had I was following maybe 90% of what he was saying. It did end up being a little jargony, but I don't know if that, it sounded like he was getting excited because he could finally speak in terms that he was sort of comfortable talking with, but I don't know what to make of it. We do have another half here. This is like another Q&A about this guy, and he shows up later on. I think this came up on Reddit or something, like he popped back up on Reddit or something. I'm not entirely sure. I want to take a break. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to, does this gel with what we know? Are there any connections that I missed with other sort of leaks and quote-unquote whistleblowers? How does this sit with the council that was mentioned by Jeremy Weeks? It does sort of ring a bell. It does talk about an imminent invasion and about our protectors trying to warn us or weaponize us against something that might be coming. But then again, we hear this 2027 sort of imminent date, and you can't help but think Project Bluebeam, or are they trying to psyop us so that the government can finally have this one world order, which I think, is it really the worst thing in the world at this point? I don't know. I don't know what to make of all this. Much like all of you, I tend to be frustrated with the lack of concrete evidence. And, I just want to know, is it true? Is any of this true? Any of it, even the smallest part of it? My gut says yes, that there is a seed of truth to all of this, that the tree might not look anything like the seed anymore. And part of me, a fleeting sort of transient part of me, thinks that, am I just being strung along? That could be too. I'm not entirely opposed to that idea. I think that might be part of it as well. I don't know. It's all very complex, but regardless, I'm happy that I get to share it with you guys. And I'm happy that I have someone here listening to my rants, to be fair. It makes it less insane that you guys are listening, because if you were here, you would realize that there's nothing here. I'm talking to electronic objects. I'm completely alone. This is, if these cameras weren't here, insane. So thank you. And thank you, cameras, for recording all of this and audio. I appreciate that too. Got to thank our AI overlords here, just in case. Folks, if you like this video and if you like what we do here and you want to support us, check us out, area52.shop. It goes a long way. Join the memberships. Also, if you want to see me on tour, Jesse and I are doing 2 shows. We got Austin and Montreal booked. Austin is February 5th. And at the Paramount, it is almost sold out, low ticket warning. And Montreal is currently, still has a few hundred tickets left. So you guys can check those out if you want to come see us. I would highly recommend it. It's going to be awesome. If you can make it, make a road trip out of it, get a hotel for the night. If you can afford it, I think it's going to be awesome. And I can't wait to see you all there. Folks, thanks so much for joining me on today's debrief. We'll see you on the next video. Peace and love.